So let's talk about Scott Cam, celebrity who's been brought in to plug the idea of getting a trade. Here again is what he's had to say.
I'm very privileged to be in this role, to be asked to be in this role. I'm passionate about apprenticeships and trade life and trade work.
Now, rather than just saying, OK, good, start of a conversation, let's start to move the needle back towards TAFE and other sorts of education. Tanya Plibersek said this, which was, Scott Cam's a good bloke, but if the Liberals were serious about fixing the skills crisis they've created, they'd stop hiring celebrities and start funding TAFE and apprentices. James, I'll ask you first. I know there was an episode of Utopia about this where they went through a bunch of celebrities about who's the best one to slap onto a policy. Look, a celebrity is not a policy, but isn't it a good idea the government is going to use every trick it can to get people to change their perceptions of what it's like to pick up the tools rather than go to uni?
Oh, look, it's all right, I suppose. I mean, I'm not... I mean, Plibersek has got a point. The number of apprenticeships has plummeted in the last few years. Absolutely. And I don't think it's... the problem is not that there's a lack of kids who want apprenticeships. In that sense, telling kids that they could do an apprenticeship is kind of fine. The issue is that Australian industry doesn't want to fund apprenticeships. And until we fix that, they want someone else to fix it, namely the government. We've got a problem. And I also think, on another level, I know you're not going to like this much, but I actually think that I'd prefer to see the Prime Minister standing in a university talking to a bunch of scientists, because then we don't... If we look at our economy, and there's a study came out from the United States that this week that really talked about how, considering how rich we are, we have an incredibly unsophisticated economy compared to comparable nations around the world. Yeah, great, carpenters, plumbers, love them, but it's not really the message I think we should be sending. All right, so, no, don't like it. No likey.
All right, no likey. Well, that's all right. Bronwyn, what do you think?
Well, I think he's quite clearly a good poster boy, but it really reflects what is the real problem. Julia Gillard removed the cap from universities, which allowed a certain number of people who had reached a certain number of points in their final year of school to attend universities and made it open slather. Clearly, she was a good Fabian. Clearly, she wanted the indoctrination of many, many young people by the left-wing lecturers within the university. You can't do it in TAFE. To say fund TAFE, it's a state responsibility, always has been. And the states have run it down. They've allowed some shonky private sector people into the training area, which is not a good idea. But in reality, if you want people not to go and do university degrees that aren't going to assist them in the workplace, then you've got to put the cap back. If you put the cap back, you will see how disproportionate the number of international students, particularly from China, are on our campuses, and you'll get a very bad reaction across there. So there are several problems that need to be addressed.
What about what James just said, though, about the analysis from the United States about where our economy is and whether the Prime Minister should be standing talking to scientists rather than standing at building sites?
No, I disagree with that, James. I mean, it's fine for him to talk to scientists at university, yes, but we need to have a workforce that can actually participate, and therefore it is important to talk about apprenticeships. It is wrong to try and encourage kids into universities who can't really attain the degree of appreciation and benefit that a university gives. And if you simply put people in there, it's a matter of having equality. And if you want all people to be equal, you have to go to the lowest common denominator. And that's what's happening in our universities.
Linda,
we are slipping back.
James?
Sorry? I think... Go on.
No, just respond.
Oh, look, there are university degrees and there are university degrees.
Correct.
Everyone agrees that, you know, marketing and you know, disco dance appreciation or whatever the hell it is these days. We've all got... you don't have to look very far to find university degrees that are BS, right? That's fine. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about hard science, which requires hard work at school.
But isn't he doing that when they say they want the space program as well? I mean, isn't he, just for the devil's advocate, hasn't he sort of already in part done that message on one day?
Yeah, fair enough. But look, in Australia, you'd never really have to work, it's never an easy, hard message to sell that you don't have to work too hard at school. And I'm sorry,
well, look
that's my view.
Look where it got me.
Well, yeah, well, true, but maybe I'm a snob. I'll own up to that. Apprenticeships were for kids who, some very bright kids, no doubt, but they were also things that people got sort of streamed off into. If they were, it was one for the thicker lads, like Geelong Grammar.
See, I would argue that that's part of the problem. Linda, sorry to keep you waiting so long, but what do you think about this, and particularly the angle about, the use of a celebrity here? Again, look, people get paid for this stuff. I wish they didn't. I wish that it was enough to say, sure, I'll lend my my sizeable profile to this, but there is a commercial reality. Again, if it was offered, I would say no. But what's your sense? I'm not offering myself, by the way.
I just think the Prime Minister would be much better putting the money into education rather than celebrity advertising. I absolutely don't think that TAFE is the second best education sphere. It is so fantastic and important. And particularly at the moment, we know 3/4 of our businesses in Australia telling us that they've got problems finding people with the skills they need. This is certainly the case in local government. I go to regional towns in New South Wales. I was in Narrabri pretty recently. They were telling me they had a cohort of their kids at their high school who wanted to do a particular TAFE course. They had about 10 of them, but the TAFE was refusing to run the course unless they could get 15. So you've got kids willing to do it and local governments willing to employ them at the end of it, but not enough funding in the middle for the TAFE to provide the education that these people need to get the skills to go on and have great careers. I've got local governments now trying to open offices in Sydney because of the regional skills crisis, and yet we've got people in the regions who can't get jobs because they can't get access to TAFE. This is a problem the Prime Minister has caused, and he should just fund the education system properly to make sure that it can happen. And I think Bronwyn's point is completely counterintuitive. How is capping access to one type of education going to solve an education problem in another stream of education? That's just completely wrong.
The rubbish degrees that are no value to anybody at all. And if you didn't have those rubbish degrees, you'd probably have 15 kids turning up for the TAFE course instead of 10. So it is a very real question. Once upon a time, a single degree guaranteed a person an advantage in life. No, it doesn't. It needs to be 2 degrees.
All right, gang, can you know what you think about that?